Men often find themselves blindsided by a culture that hates authentic masculinity, and many have given in and succumbed to the ever-evolving culture and woke society. But not us. We are the ReMENant, faithful Catholic men from 3 different generations who reach through the radio to tackle current events that challenge our wills and empower the practice of the Catholic faith through thought-provoking discernment and prayer. So, if you're feeling overwhelmed and bombarded, it's time to turn your radio up and join us for The ReMENant on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to The ReMENant. It's wonderful to be with you once again. As always, I'm joined by 2 great friends, Stephen Thomas and Ray Haywood. And tonight really is our first episode of content. We laid the framework in episode 1. If you're listening on Carolina Catholic Radio Live, make sure you hit up that podcast feed on their website so you can hear the first episode and just learn a little bit about what we are all about. But I want to jump in to our first episode because we don't have all that much time to be with you, to be honest. We got a half-hour show. So, Stephen, we're going to talk tonight about the Latin Mass in our opening segment. And so I'd love it if you'd lead that discussion for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So recently, Pope Francis has released a motu proprio or decree, Traditionis Custodes, or the Guardians of Tradition, which has abrogated the former motu proprio by Benedict XVI in 2008, I believe, called Summorum Pontificum. And basically what this means is that it has returned the Church to the state of affairs right after the Vatican Council, meaning that priests have to, or upcoming priest seminarians must consult with the Vatican in order to be able to practice the extraordinary form of the Mass. And there has been some pushback from this. A lot of the people in the traditional community that I talk to here in our diocese, seminarians especially that I'm aware of, they take this as sort of not quite ill will, but it does not sit with them well. And it often is a cause for tension and, at worst, disunity in the Church. And that is not something at all, I believe, that any faithful Catholic would like to participate in or encourage. We should all strive for unity regardless of whatever liturgical form or rite that we practice. It's one thing to note that's important is that there are some 26 or 28 different rites in communion with Rome. There's the Maronites and the Byzantines and the Armenians, all the Eastern churches. It's not just the Roman rite of the Catholic Church. There are many others. So to get back to the traditional Latin Mass, it developed organically from the time of Gregory the Great. That makes it about 1,400 years old. It was codified or made official in 1570 when Pius V published the Missale Romanum. And it was used as a primary form in the Roman Church until the Second Vatican Council in the 1960s. So why do I attend the Latin Mass regularly? Why do many young people feel the way that I do? Well, I think that to retell what Pope Benedict said once in a speech to the Chilean bishops, young people, especially, I believe, take refuge in the traditional form because they see ambiguities and liturgical chaos, I would say, most likely, in the new Mass at times. Not to say that the new Mass is some objective, incorrect thing, not at all, but that they notice this lack of treating the sacred in the dignified manner that it ought to be, this desacralization that goes hand in hand with, I think, from Vatican II onwards, for many different social reasons across history, the world became a lot more secular. So it's not to say that Vatican Council happened, then all this other stuff happened. No, not exactly. There's a lot of factors that factor in. There's a lot of factors that play into this. It's not just the council. That's not the point. But what happened after? And a lot of people expressed disapproval with this. So with that said, I think that when one examines the motu proprio itself, like when we all reflected upon a article by George Weigel, who's who's beyond parallel in the Catholic world. He's a major player who's beyond reproach, who I personally agree with that that Pope Francis and those who assisted in this motu proprio have mischaracterized traditional Catholics on the whole. I don't believe that, or what should I say? I don't think that tradition on the whole, traditional Catholics on the whole, hold viewpoints that are innately subversive. I don't think that just simply because I attend the Latin Mass, that doesn't mean that I have this contrarian spirit that spreads dissension amongst the ranks. That is not the way that I believe many traditional Catholics feel. That is not to say that there aren't radicals who do that, and that's not okay, but I don't believe that that is what the majority of people who would consider themselves traditional Catholics believe. On the contrary, I believe that many feel that they have to bend over backwards to a pope that they feel is hostile to them. So with that point, I'd like to come to my closing point on this, I think, is that between the secular age that we live in, with a pandemic, with many other problems, both international and then particularly for the United States, a lot of domestic problems, I don't believe that the traditional Latin Mass problem, shall we say, is exactly the biggest fish to fry. In summation, I believe that it is simply that when many of the younger people, such as myself, and then also in larger Catholic media, we have figures such as Matt Fradd or Scott Hahn, who over time in their own pursuit for the truth gravitate towards tradition, and they end up seeking this sort of eternal sense of otherworldliness. And that is simply how I would sum up my own experience with the Latin Mass, is that it is this otherworldliness which draws me out of the frenetic chaos that we find in the world today. I find myself always going from, got to have my coffee in the morning, got to go to the car, got to be there at this time, check. And then the Mass, when I attend the Tridentine Mass, the traditional Mass, I find it easier to cast off that sort of worldly self, and instead I'm able to just be in it. I'm able to just simply be in it. I'm not worried about what comes next. I'm not worried about getting to the next thing. And I actually find myself being gently pulled. It's a gentle move of the soul, I think, to want to be there and simply be present and look at the reverence and the care and the sacredness with which our Lord is treated within that liturgy. And with that, I'll pass it off.
Yeah, Stephen, I think you bring up some really great points. And one of the things that, in listening to you, echoed inside my heart was that there are so many different rites of the Catholic Church. It's not just the traditional Latin Mass. There's the Byzantine rite, and there's the Marianite. So there's all these different rites of the Church that are in union with Rome. And I find that incredibly uplifting. As a charismatic Catholic, being involved in the charismatic renewal, even within that renewal, there is a movement toward the tradition and the traditional Latin Mass, and for the things that you just spoke about. And so I think for me, personally, and I'm a person who's attended Latin Mass, used to go to Latin Mass every single, with a friend, I would go every Christmas Eve morning for like 5 or 7 years. I went to a traditional Latin Mass with him, and it was just beautiful and peaceful, and all those things that you were talking about. So, as Catholics, I think we should have a respect for the diversity of worship, because there is a respect for it within the church. As Stephen highlighted, there's 22 or 23 different rites, and so if we are, reflecting on our hearts, just to think about that, and the diversity of worship should be respected, because I always like to say our spiritualities are as unique as our fingerprints. God gave us a specific mission that only He gave to us. And so, like feather, like to hang together, I guess, and that's okay. So those are my thoughts on it. And I encourage people to, if you have it in your diocese, if you're able to attend a Latin Mass or a Byzantine Mass or any other rite that's in communion with Rome, I encourage you to, step into it, because I think you'll be surprised and find some interesting stuff that happens, and draw your spiritual life, into a richer, deeper experience of who God is through going to and experiencing that. So with that, Ray, any closing thoughts on the Latin Mass and in this section of our radio show today?
So this is very close to Stephen and his generation. And Stephen shared with Bill and I 3 articles for us to review before we came out. It's a beautiful thing. We get to grow in this together. We have conversations prior to coming on. But one thing was in common. All 3 of those articles had negative tones. So, being 54, having enough life behind me, I understand that God is allowing this moment, and that we need to find peace in our path, because if He didn't want this to be happening, He wouldn't. Now, with that being said, I want to say that as the father of 2 grown men, I know that both of my sons are very different men than me, and I grow through them. They grow through me. But I know that for them to be nurtured, especially in their faith walk, they need different things. So I am taken back that this beautiful form and order that can't be found for a lot of young men in the secular world, out in their physical world, is being taken away in their spiritual world. But I want to say one thing. When I was a young man, I used to judge my father. And I would always say, why is he doing that? I was a young father, and he was an older man, and he would do things, and I would question it. And sometimes I would even question it to him. But then when it came time myself to live through those moments later on, I would understand that he was doing. Although it was too late for me to say to my father, I understand. The lesson was learned. So our pastor, Father Matthew Codd, 2 days after, on the 18th of July, he shared a heartfelt homily with us, that he said that when he went into seminary, he thought that his biggest challenge would be chastity. And he was told that his biggest challenge would be obedience. And it's for him to be obedient in this moment, and for us to be obedient in this moment, and to understand that God is allowing it to happen.
Yeah, great points, everybody. And I think a lot to reflect on. So I encourage you, as I do almost every time we're on the radio, which is every week, go back and listen to it on the podcast version. If you joined us like halfway through this discussion, listen to it on the podcast, because you're going to get another perspective, be able to hear it in its entirety. So we got to take a short break here on The Remnant. We'll be right back after these messages on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network.
AM 1270, Catholic Radio Charlotte, on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network. Download our new mobile app at carolinacatholicradio.org.
How's it going, Remnant listeners? This is your co-host, Stephen Thomas. Like you, and all discerning men, I am often intrigued and provoked by what I see and what I hear about in the world today, and I wonder whether or not I can reconcile it to our Catholic faith. And my apostolate primarily is that of the Catholic school teacher, but I also write essays and reflections on topics that I believe are either noteworthy or important to the Catholic world today. My work can be found at Musings of a Young Mind. Just search it or put musingsofayoungmindworks.wordpress.com in your search bar. Thank you, and hail Christ the King. God bless.
Hello, my name is Ray Haywood, and I'm coming to you today to speak to you about the Fraternity of St. Joseph Men's Group, a men's group that was started under the leadership of Father Matthew Card by the intentional men of the parish of St. Thomas Aquinas here in our Diocese of Charlotte, North Carolina. In our first efforts, we were asked if we would model our men's group in a way that other parishes could simply follow. With that intent in mind, we created the FSJJourneyman.com website. On that website, you can find all that is needed to create your own chapter of the Fraternity of St. Joseph Men's Group in your parish, as well as resource documents that we are intentionally placing into our faith community. We hope that you will step closer to the path and to each other in the just model of St. Joseph as you consider creating your own chapter of the Fraternity of St. Joseph Men's Group.
Today, many students go to college with numerous questions about their faith, yearning to know if the seed planted in them as a child is both true and practical. Using the miracle on the road to Emmaus as a model, young adult ministers conversed weekly for 3 months with college students about the most pressing questions they had about the Catholic faith. As they journeyed together virtually, something amazing happened. Doubts disappeared, fears faded, and Jesus revealed that He is still alive. Hearts Burning Within Us, the latest book from Patchwork Heart Ministry, is a result of that grace-infused conversation. It is the perfect back-to-school gift for recent high school graduates and current college students. Get your copy for them today at patchworkheart.org or by calling 424-704-3278. That's 424-704-3278.
The Carolina Catholic Radio Network, a proud affiliate of EWTN Radio, produces over a dozen local programs with over 500 segments now available as podcasts and on demand for your listening convenience. In addition to our audio programs, there's also outstanding content available for you on our website, mobile app, Facebook page, YouTube channel, and email newsletter. Carolina Catholic has many awesome plans for you across our 6 platforms this fall. In the weeks ahead, we will begin to share our plans as we secure your financial support to make them a reality. Please consider a one-time donation or monthly tithe today. Just go to the Donate tab on carolinacatholicradio.org. Carolina Catholic is needed now more than ever to evangelize the truth of Jesus Christ and our Catholic faith to guide us in daily life. Thank you for your prayerful consideration to join us in our mission across the Carolinas. May God bless you abundantly.
Welcome back to The Remnant on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network.
Welcome back, everybody, to The Remnant. I'm Bill Snyder, as always, joined by Stephen Thomas and Ray Haywood. We are talking with you in this segment about what we're going to do every week is do a saint. We're going to give you a saint and also a challenge before we leave you for the week. So, Ray, I would love it if you'd kick it off with our saint and tell us a little bit about him and how we can live his charism, and that would be the saint of St. Joseph.
Absolutely. So our first saint is St. Joseph, so close to my heart. And St. Joseph has been close to me way before the year of St. Joseph. So many things in my ministry are encompassed and through the intercession of St. Joseph. A couple of points. So St. Joseph's yes is what actually ushered in our new covenant teachings. And just as our Blessed Mother's yes brought us to the same place, it was through the union of their marriage that we actually come into the new covenant teachings, and we beautifully have the deposit of faith to hand on to our families as within the sacraments, those guiding graces that help our families to navigate well in their physical world towards working out their salvation. A couple of points on St. Joseph that I'd like to bring out, how it comes so close to me is that I hold a place in the St. Joseph, the fraternity of St. Joseph Men's Group. And the whole thing within many of my ministries is to assemble men, just as what we have here in this, 3 generations of men sharing and reaching out and grabbing other men, encouraging them to step closer to the path. St. Joseph is who we should model, we should embrace, and we should definitely assemble in the just model of St. Joseph. And for other men who would like to do that, they could simply go to the Fraternity of St. Joseph Men's Group's website, fsjjourneyman.com. So, Stephen.
Awesome, Ray. That was great. So, I myself am also a member of the fraternity, and it is a lovely place where men come together in fellowship for provocative discussion. Shall we say, we all grow when we have those meetings. So my own particular devotion to St. Joseph centers around trust. And I think for myself as a young man, and I'm sure many young men will resonate with this, is we often ask ourselves these questions coming out of college usually, or however. How will I find a job? How will I one day support a family? So St. Joseph is the ideal intercessor for such intentions, especially now that, at least certainly in my entire life, for sure, the world seems to be at its most chaotic. So to understand the trust of St. Joseph, let's examine a couple brief historical details. He's going to be married to the Blessed Mother. And then the unthinkable happens. She says, hey, so an angel told me I'm going to give birth to the Son of God. That's a lot for a humble Nazarene carpenter to take in, for sure. But at the urging of the angel in his dream, he still trusts. He doesn't abandon Mary. He could have divorced her, but he didn't. He remained true to the course, took her as his own, remains faithful to her, takes her to Bethlehem for the census. Well, that fulfills the prophecy in the Old Covenant. A king born in Bethlehem to the line of David. Joseph, as the foster father of Jesus, gives him his lineage from David. Joseph is of that line, that royal line. And then another thing, a second important detail from Joseph's life that I'd like to emphasize is the flight into Egypt. So Herod is hunting for the baby Jesus because he doesn't want a rival. I'm going into a foreign land in Egypt, no less. You would probably think, where will I stay? How will I make money? When will I be able to go home? And yet, he trusted. He endured, and he fulfilled God's will, which is what being righteous is all about. And with that, Bill, I'll hand it off to you.
Awesome. Yeah. So many great points you guys have made. And one that I think I want to make is just where my personal relationship with St. Joseph comes into play. And a few years ago, it was Christmas time, and I had gone home for Christmas to my mom and dad's to be with them and hang out with them. And what was incredible was underneath the Christmas tree, they gave me a box with this sleeping St. Joseph inside. And if you've never seen this devotion, it's pretty cool because Joseph, just as you guys mentioned, received the messages from the angel during dreams. And so the sleeping St. Joseph is something that you take and you put notes underneath, prayers underneath, and you allow St. Joseph to sleep on them for you. And it's pretty amazing, this devotion for me, because in participating in this devotion, I have written prayers that no eye has ever seen other than St. Joseph. And I allow St. Joseph just to sleep on those prayers. And I hope that through the grace of God and through his intercession, that they're heard. Some of them have been. Some of those prayers have been answered. So that kind of leads into my ReMENant challenge for the week, is allow St. Joseph to accompany you in your life and entrust those prayers for him that can be slept on. You know, it doesn't have to be this oftentimes active prayer. It can be this passive prayer, like the prayer of St. Joseph in sleep, that really gets answered. So put those things in the arms of St. Joseph. Allow those really big worries, those really big issues and problems in your life that don't seem to be able to have be able to be solved. Just put them in his arms and allow him to sleep on them, and you'll be surprised what his intercession can do through that sleep. So that's kind of where I'll leave it. Stephen, I'll toss it back to you for the ReMENant challenge as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So my ReMENant challenge to you is, I want you to find a particular prayer to St. Joseph's. Perhaps you've heard of the consecration to St. Joseph by Father Donald Calloway. I'd start there. But there are many different prayers to St. Joseph which you can use. So find one in the next week, and then find a church near you that has a statue or some other depiction of St. Joseph. If you're in the Charlotte area, perhaps St. Thomas, where the Holy Family statue is depicted, or St. Michael's in Gastonia, or St. Joseph's Adoration Chapel at Belmont Abbey College, for a few examples. And I want you to go there, and I want you to pray to St. Joseph, to ask for his powerful intercession that you develop the virtue of trust in our Lord. And then lastly, also pray for St. Joseph's College Seminary in our diocese, that it can yield the fruit of good spiritual fathers for the future. And Ray, I'll pass it off to you.
Yes, so I really appreciate this ReMENant portion of our show. It's, so important for us to encourage our brothers in Christ to step closer to the path, and for us to scratch at you some awareness so that you could actually do that, step closer to the path. So let's take a look at St. Joseph. He was not a priest, he was a layman. Just like us, he was lay faithful, and what I would like to bring into awareness is that it's not the job of our clergy to ready the next generations of Catholics. It's not their job alone. As lay faithful, it's our job as well. And it's something we need to bring closer to us in awareness. We need to make that into a competency. So I have 2 points here. One's for the younger man. Don't be so caught up in your gathering stage. If this is the first time you heard about the gathering stage, think about this. You're trying to prepare your physical life. So you're in that moment where you're trying to build something, and don't be too caught up in your gathering stage to recognize your spiritual world and your family's, faith formation. Don't think that it's just going to come through the clergy. You need to step up. Now, for our older men, a lot of us are feeling as though we're not being heard. But I want you to know, as children of God, we innately hear our Father's voice. It's something we can't avoid. It bounces around in our head, not just our fathers, but our parents' voices. So I want you to understand how important it is for us older men that we have to keep chipping away at telling our young adults and our grandchildren how important it is to have that tradition, that the positive faith, and to have that, the sacraments instilled in our children to guide them. So men, understand we will be held accountable. And the best way for us to form is to assemble in the just model of St. Joseph. So Bill, you want to take us out?
Yes, I'll take us out. Well, thank you so much for joining us on The ReMENant today. And as always, may you be blessed and your family be blessed. See you next week.
Thank you for joining The ReMENant today. For more information about us, email theremnantshow@gmail.com. That's the ReMenant show at gmail.com.